Hello, welcome to class assignment 1. Designing tables with data definitions, which we discussed in our class notes. So let's create a table in the database. But before we can create a table, we have to design it. Designing in tables is simple, but you have to follow certain rules. I would recommend you for this assignment to use pen and paper. For simplicity of introducing you subject of data definitions, let's create a design sample table. For example, table students, which will contain information for students in our database, which we will create during this session. Now, first we have to write table name. I recommend you to get pen and paper, because designing database starts with ancient method, pen and paper. So, or you can use Microsoft Word to record everything. But before we can create anything in Microsoft Access 2013, we have to make sure that we know what we are creating. So let's just write down whatever you will see on the screen. And then, after we're done with designing the table, we will create a new table. So first we have to come up with this table name, and as you can see, I wrote for you. We call the table TBL. That's how we denote that this is a table, and all tables for this class will have a prefix TBL underscore, and then it will be table name. In this purpose, this table name is students, TBL underscore student. Next, what fields table student can have? So we have to think, and as designers we have to be inclusive. We have to think some properties of a student which we will want to store in our database. For example, first we need to have a primary key. As we discussed before, primary key is a very important part of any database. This is something which will identify each student in our table. For example, we can use student ID or social security. Both of them will work because those numbers unique, right? So primary key must be something unique about the student. For our purpose, we will use student ID, and that's what you usually use in a college, in a SA college. So what else can you have? We can also store student first name, student last name, student phone, student gender, student street address, student city, student zip code, student date of birth, and student credits. That's enough for now. So let's continue. Once we figure out what fields we want to store in our database, we'll do the following. We will just record them all on the left side, as I did it here. You can see it. First, we'll have a primary key, student ID. So primary key we denote as PK underscore then field name. And this is what most people would do. The question is, will database work if you don't do it? Yes, it will. But later it will get very confusing for you. So what I recommend, if you have a primary key in your design board, that's what we have now, we're designing our database and what data field we want to use, we will use PK to denote primary key. So PK underscore student ID, and notice I do not use any spaces between in the field names. It's very important not to use spaces. If you need to put space, put underscore. Later we'll talk more about it. Then we write field student underscore first underscore name. Again, we don't use any spaces, we use underscore for it. Student last name, student gender, student phone, student street address, student city, student zip code, student date of birth, and student credits. This is sample data which people usually store for a student, right? Now let's assign data definitions for it, meaning data types. And please refer to notes which I posted for this class. So for primary key, it's easy to use auto number, and we will talk more about it once I will show you the database. So in many cases, not in most, but in many cases, auto number would be a good option for a primary key, because auto number it means ID will start from 1 and it will go to indefinite. Each new student which will be entered into database will have data as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Then we can have student first name. Student first name we can have as a short text, and we can make it 50 characters. And as I described in my notes, it's very important to set number of characters. Yes, default is 255, but you have to select as many characters as you need it, as it saves space on the database and makes it easier later to guide user what to enter. We'll talk more about it. So why did I choose 50 characters? Because usually I don't know any first name which has more than 50 characters. 50 is, I think it's also a lot, but 50 characters should be enough. Then we have student last name. I would put 50 characters too, because I mean 50 characters pretty long last name. Now student gender. Field student gender. How many characters it should have? I will give you a moment to think. Now, let's see what we have. We can have male, 1, 2, 3, 4 characters. Or we can have female, 6 characters. And you can look at the drawing. So, there is no other options. How many characters do you think it's supposed to be? Based on this picture and based on our options, field student gender must have 6 characters. Because whenever we select number of characters, we have to make sure that we select maximum number of characters which your field will allow. So, if I will enter 4 characters as male, I will never be able to enter female. Because female have 6 characters, right? It will be, if we have 4 characters, we will have enter FEMA, and then LE will not fit. So we have to select maximum number of characters, which is 6 characters. So it's still short text, 6 characters. What about field student phone number? I use ST just so it will fit on the screen, but it's field student phone number. So how many characters will be student phone number? Let's see. When we write phone number, we write it in this way, right? As you can see on the screen. And you see it's 13 characters. So student phone number will be short text, 13 characters. Similarly, we add short text, 70 characters for street address, because street address can be long, but I think 70 characters is enough. Student city. City is 50 characters, should be good, because I mean it's a pretty long name, 50 letters of the city. Student zip code. Student zip code, usually we can record as short text, 5 characters. Zip code usually 5 numbers, but even though it's numbers, we don't call it numbers, because we assign data type numbers only to those fields which we might need for mathematical calculation. There is no math with zip codes, so that's why we call it short text, 5 characters. Next we'll have student date of birth. Student date of birth, it's date and time, short date, and refer to the notes to see what it is. That's how we will record date of birth. We will use date and time data type. And the last one for this exercise, student credits. For student credits, we'll have data type as a number, because we do math with student credits. Sometimes we want to calculate how many credits student have, or how many credits student needs to graduate, right? So it's going to be number, and it will be long integer. Integer, it means it's a whole number, as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 100, 1000. And if it's not integer, it can be double. Double means 5.2. 5.3, 5.55, 6.75, when you have decimals after the point. And you can see, before you even start working with Access, you need to create data definitions for each field. Now, once you have it drawn or out, it will be very easy to create. And in the next video, we will create this database.